Ron Connor, as I told you in the part one of the videos for the Soirée auction in Las Vegas, began with clocks, moved to music boxes, moved to automatons, many of which had beautiful bisque heads, and then, as one thing leads to another, he started to recognize and just enjoy and revel in the beautiful antique bisque dolls made by Pierre-François Jumeau and then his son, Emile Jumeau. And so the catalog, Soirée, is filled with exquisite Jumeau dolls because one thing led to another, and he began to collect Jumeau dolls and has wonderful ones. I have here on the table in front of me an array of the poupées, the lady dolls that were made. And our large doll on the left is one of the earliest portrait models made by Pierre-François Jumeau, his father, who was the origin of the company. Very, very fine bisque portrait-like face, very delicate bisque, very pale rose complexion, which really is complemented by this stunning costume. This doll is so rare in its size that likely it was made only on special commission or made for an exhibition where it would have been shown. Pierre-François Jumeau was very old school, and he really liked the kid body of the poupée, although he did experiment with the wooden bodies to some extent. It led to a little friction between father and son when the bébé was about to be introduced because Emile wanted the new composition of wooden body, and Dad stuck with the kid. The earlier bisque heads that were made for the poupées by Pierre-François Jumeau are shown in this large girl. And then on the other side of the table, in this really exquisite girl with the ivory gown. And what you notice is that although they are basically the same model, variations in painting, in eyes, and in sculpting and pose of the head made each doll appear really different. And so, as one collector said to me once, you can never have too many. And this is very true. We have two beautiful early ladies here. And then standing next to them is another example of the early lady in this wonderful maroon velvet and silk costume with embroidered bonnet. I'm going to turn this one around so you're able to see her costume all the way around. Very, very beautiful eyes. If you noticed in all of the three that I'm showing you so far, that their bisque is very, very pale and delicate, and they have a very gentle, not dramatic at all, but a very gentle expression to their face, which was in keeping with the time, with the 1870s. As time went on, Jumeau began to experiment with different variations, and in this case, we have a kid body, very desirable by collectors today because of the ability to articulate the body in various poses. And this example even has the rare swivel waist. And I want to turn her around now so you can see her gorgeous gown from all angles. Very, very beautifully costumed. Always a signature mark of really most of the French doll makers of the time, but certainly of Jumeau. Their costumes were most important. As time went along, as Emile Jumeau began to make the bébés, there was this evolution of the heads for the lady dolls. It began to be made in models that could be used for the bébés. And one of the things that happened, and we can see it in this smaller model right here, they have larger eye cuts. So rather than have the very dainty, narrow eye cuts of the earlier poupées, we have here these wonderful, large, and very dramatic eyes, which changes the expression completely from the earlier gentle expression to this later very wide-eyed, very sophisticated type of look. And finally, I wanted to show you one more Jumeau poupée from the Ron Connor collection, because as time went on, the Emile Jumeau firm began to try to cater to the international trade that was developing with all of the international expositions in Paris. And they would present dolls in very exotic costumes. And we have here one of the original costumes presented by the Jumeau firm. Sometimes they were actually presented by Jumeau, and in other cases, they were commissioned by various shops in Paris that would cater to an international trade. Notice that this girl has her wonderful original Jumeau wig, even kept a little Jumeau earrings, even though the rest of the costume is so very, very stylized of its type. After Emile Jumeau took over the running of the Jumeau firm, his father kind of eased off and he took over, and he wanted to move away from what his father had specialized in, which were the lady dolls, we call them poupées, into the child dolls, which were the new rage in the doll world, or known as bébés. And this is so extraordinary to me because we talk about different models of them and we never pay attention to the short period of time in which this occurred, beginning in like 1877 at the very earliest. Remember that it was only 22 years later, that the Jumeau firm effectively ended by merging into SFBJ. So during this 22-year period, that firm created an extraordinary number of very, very beautiful dolls. They were so known today. I don't want to say they were the Barbie of their day because that sounds awful, but in terms of public recognition of the name, everyone knew the name Jumeau. It was the cardinal sign of quality, of luxury, and yet of a doll that people could afford because they came into various price ranges. In his very earliest period, he did what we call the Premier Jumeau, and we have a beautiful small example of it here. And notice the painting, when the camera comes in on the face, notice the painting is very simplistic. It's not highly refined at all. And I want you to keep that in mind because when you come along to Jumeau's from just 10 years later on, you're going to see how the painting has been so extraordinarily refined. This company under Emile Jumeau it was like, we talk about Ford, the Ford company doing marketing or doing assembly work. This company, the Jumeau company, in their time were so remarkable. They were the first company that pulled everything together. So their entire doll was made in one factory. The head, the body, the wig, the costume, the box, even the eyes, everything was made and assembled under his guidance and his tutelage. This was so important. His marketing was Mad Men quality. Let me tell you, he had the most extraordinary marketing in the world, not only appearing in exhibitions, but in the advertising he did, in little premiums and games and promotional pieces that he did were so important to him. Okay, I've diverged, but I'm always so fascinated by the company itself and what he did. And you should read about it if you do have a chance. At any rate, his very first bébé, and he won a blue ribbon for this at the 1878 exposition. And that's when his father kind of said, okay, I give up. Go ahead, go on with the bébés, and you can do the composition bodies. And that's what he did. We have this very, very dear, tiny model, so sought after by collectors. Over here on the right, our red-capped girl, and as I talk about each of these, I'll turn them around so you can see their costumes. Wonderful design. This would, again, have been one of his premier dolls. Now, collectors call them variously premier bébés or portrait bébés. Portrait not meaning it was a portrait of any particular person, but simply meaning denoting its deluxe quality. So whether you call it premier or portrait, it simply means it was the first issue of the bébé to come out. And look at the eyes. Compared now to just a few years earlier, the poupées with their very gentle, narrow eyes representing adult women. Here we have a child whose eyes are big in proportion to the head as a child would be, which is what called Emile Jumeau to be making these wonderful paperweight eyes that were eventually made in his own factory and just really gave the look to his dolls, a very beautiful example. After he was making dolls for a short while, he realized that he really should have some way of marking his dolls. Now, he had been marking them on their back torso, right above the butt, but he wanted to mark the heads. And so he marked them, but not with his name. He marked them with his initial, E.J. The E.J. bébés came out in 3 series. The very earliest one just has the initials E.J. very close together on the head and a size underneath it, and that's what we have here. Very, very gorgeous doll. I'm going to turn her around so you can see her from all aspects. Very plump face. She has her original lamb's wool wig, which many of these early luxury dolls did, and over it was later placed an antique mohair wig. And I am going to remove that so you could see what the lamb's wool wig looked like. And original Jumeau earrings. This would be the earliest period E.J. Bébé, always coming with a very, very fat, plump body with very full lower limbs, 8 loose ball jointed. The second period of the E.J. was simply marked with the E.J. Deposé, and at that point he had deposed the mark E.J. because he was beginning to realize more and more the competition that was coming on, and were claiming that they had like the French Bébé, sometimes even kind of representing that they had a Bébé made by Jumeau. So he began to mark his dolls with his E.J. mark, Deposé, and the size number, and was very adamant in his advertising. Now, I have one here who has, from the Ron Connor collection, that has a wonderful costume, frail. No denying that. It's quite frail in the silk, but it is from the original Jumeau factory and sold by them in this manner. Very, very beautifully done. And when she comes back around, Karen was going to show you the depth of these paperweight eyes that I talked to you about already. They are absolutely extraordinary. She has her original wig. Once again, a word for the women. Ernestine Jumeau, his wife, was responsible for all of the costuming. She had her studio. She designed all of the costumes, and it said that she changed the style of the costumes every 6 months. Whenever a new doll season would come out, spring or fall, she would have the latest style for Parisian children in her doll costumes. One of the things I think collectors should pay more attention to when they're able to find an original costume are the color combinations that were used by the doll costumers of that time. And this burgundy and ivory was a very, very popular color combination to be used. Many of the dolls from the Ron Connor collection, in fact, I would say most of them, have their original signed Bébé Jumeau shoes, something else that Jumeau also made in his factory. And we have 2 other examples here, beautiful examples of the lovely Deposé E.J. Bébé by Jumeau. Very, very beautiful, with different color eyes and a different look. And then the tiniest size right here, which continued to be made and were offered in the store. You could find in the department store offerings, you could find all of the sizes that were listed and the various prices that were charged for each. You could purchase a Bébé Jumeau in a very simple muslin chemise and simple hair, or you could order one with what they called hair flottante, which was long flowing mohair curls, and a very, very luxury silk dress. And all of these impacted on what was being offered at the time.